Well, we have now another really exciting presentation from Jean-Michel Molina on the IPERGAY study.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. So on behalf of my co-authors and the ENRS IPERGAY study group, I would like to thank the CROI organizers for allowing us to present our results today. These are my disclosures. As you know, we still have a high number of new HIV infections among MSM in France and Canada. Conflicting results have been obtained from PrEP trials with oral daily TDF and FTC, mainly because of differences in adherence, the Achilles heel of PrEP. So we thought we should assess more convenient dosing regimen, and on-demand at the time of sexual exposure could be one of those convenient regimen. We thought on-demand PrEP could improve adherence, safety, and cost-effectiveness, and make PrEP overall more attractive. On-demand PrEP is also supported by animal model data. These data have been published by Garcia-Lermont and Hainin's group at CDC in 2010, and they show that in the macaque model, when you give the animal a double dose of oral TDF and FTC 2 hours and before and 24 hours after a rectal challenge with the Shiv virus once weekly, you almost fully protected these animals as compared to untreated controls. And building on these data, we designed the IPERGAY study. IPERGAY meaning a study designed with and for the gay community, and we got strong support for the gay community in France to do the study also in Canada. This slide shows you the study design. It's a double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled trial enrolling HIV-negative, high-risk MSM, high-risk being defined as condomless anal sex with at least 2 different partners over the last 6 months, and a normal EGFR. And these participants were randomized 1-to-1 to receive, in addition to full prevention services, either TDF-FTC or placebo before and after sex. This was an endpoint-driven study, and we intended to show at least a 50% decrease in HIV incidence with on-demand PrEP with TDF-FTC in this trial, with an expected incidence in the placebo arm of 3 per 100 person years. Participants were followed at month 1, 2, and every other month thereafter. This slide shows you the dosing regimen in IPERGAY. Participants were instructed to take 2 tablets 2 to 24 hours before sex, a 3rd tablet 24 hours later after sex, and the 4th tablet 48 hours after the first drug intake. So overall, for one sexual intercourse, the participants had to use 4 tablets. The primary study endpoint was HIV infection, diagnosed either using a 4th-generation assay combining the detection of antibodies and antigen in serum or the detection of HIV RNA in plasma. Secondary endpoints included safety and tolerability, adherence using either pill counts, plasma drug levels, questionnaires using computers-assisted self-interviews, sexual behavior, and sexually transmitted infections. As you may know, in October 23rd of last year, the DSMB recommended the discontinuation of the placebo arm because of high effectiveness of on-demand PrEP with TDF-FTC, and recommend that on-demand PrEP be offered to all participants. This slide shows you the study flow chart. We screened 445 participants. We randomized 414, and 400 overall were included in the modified intent-to-treat analysis. What you can see also on this flow chart is that overall 88% of the participants completed follow-up. So we had a pretty good retention rate in this trial. In terms of baseline characteristics, these baseline characteristics were well balanced across both treatment arms. Median age was 35 years. Most participants were white, had completed secondary educations, were employed, and single. At baseline, 22 to 29% of these participants had an STI. Their median number of sexual acts in the 4 weeks prior enrollment was 10, and the median number of sexual partners in the prior 2 months was 8. You could see that during the course of the study, there was no major change in sexual behavior. The median number of sexual acts, number of sexual partners remained almost unchanged, as was the use of condoms for anal intercourse. And you can see that overall, 70% of the participants did not use a condom for anal sex. That explains actually why we've seen such a high rate of sexually transmitted infection in the study, since at least 1/3 of the participants presented at least one STI, could have been chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis, or HCV infection, with no difference between the two arms. What about the efficacy of the primary endpoint? This slide shows you the Kaplan-Meier estimates of time to HIV infection in the modified intent to treat population. And you can see a very significant difference between the Truvada arm in blue and the placebo arm in red. With a mean follow-up of 13 months, 16 subjects became infected, 14 in the placebo arm for a high incidence of 6.6 per 100 person-years, and only 2 in the TDF-FTC arm. And of note, these 2 participants became infected only after 16 months in the study. They actually had discontinued PrEP a couple of months before infection, and there was no drug detected in their plasma at the time of infection and either at the visit before. So overall, these results show an 86% relative reduction in the incidence of HIV-1 infection in this trial with on-demand TDF-FTC as compared with placebo, and the 95 confidence interval ranges from 40 to 99. The number needed to treat for 1 year to present one infection with on-demand TDF-FTC was only 18. What about adherence? We measure adherence first by pill counts, and the slide shows you the number of pills used at each visit by all participants with the 2 groups combined. Overall, the median number of pills per month that the participants used in the study was similar in the placebo and Truvada arm, 16 pills per month, instead of 30 pills if they were on a daily regimen, and 60 pills per month means 4 pills per week. So participants were using 4 pills to cover 1 sexual intercourse per week. During the course of the study, 12% of the participants also received post-exposure prophylaxis with a similar proportion in the 2 arms. Another way to look at adherence is to look at the use of pills by each individual over time. And on these 2 graphs, with TDF-FTC in the left-hand side and placebo in the right-hand side, you have the pill patterns for each individual on one horizontal line. And you could see that overall there was a large heterogeneity in terms of pill pattern of use. And this explains that participants were indeed on an on-demand regimen. Another way to assess PrEP use during the study was to ask participants about the use of PrEP during their last sexual intercourse. And we were able to assess more than 1,000 sexual intercourses. And you could see that overall, 28% of these participants did not use PrEP during their last sexual intercourse. So participants were able to select the type of sexual intercourse, the type of partners with whom they would want to use PrEP. In terms of adverse events, as shown on these slides, there was no major difference between the 2 arms in terms of the number of adverse events, the number of serious adverse events, grade 3 or 4 adverse events, very similar rates in both arms. Only 1 participant randomized in the TDF-FTC arm actually discontinued treatment because of an adverse event, and that was a suspected drug-drug interaction with anticoagulant. Only the rate of drug-related gastrointestinal adverse events was actually higher with TDF-FTC as compared to placebo, with more participants complaining of nausea, vomiting, or abdominal pain with TDF-FTC as compared to placebo. In terms of lab abnormalities, again, very little difference between the 2 arms. We've seen only a grade 1 elevation in plasma creatinine with a higher rate in the TDF-FTC arm as compared to the placebo arm. This was barely significant. No difference in proteinuria or glycosuria assessed by dipstick. No difference in ALT elevation. And when you look at the few participants who presented grade 3 or 4 ALT elevation, these participants had presented either acute HCV infection or syphilis. So in conclusion, in this population of high-risk MSM, the incidence of HIV infection in the placebo arm was higher than expected. On-demand oral PrEP with TDF-FTC was very effective, with an 86% relative reduction in HIV incidence. Adherence to PrEP was good, supporting the acceptability by the participants on this on-demand PrEP regimen. The safety of on-demand TDF-FTC was overall similar to placebo, except for more gastrointestinal adverse events. There was no evidence of risk compensation in the setting of this study. So we feel that on-demand PrEP is an attractive alternative to daily PrEP in high-risk MSM who do not use condoms consistently, and that on-demand PrEP could be a game changer for PrEP use. I'd like now to acknowledge all the people who made the study possible, the participants, the study staff and peer counselors, the Trial Scientific Committee, the DSMB, the Community Advisory Board, the NRS staff, INSERM and the funders, ENRS, the Canadian Trial Network, the Gates Foundation, the Pierre Berger Funds, and Gilead. And the list of these people is on this slide. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for that lovely talk. I'm wondering what dosing regimen was advised for participants who had intercourse more frequently than every 2 days, for example, 2 days in a row.
Well, thank you for this question. Actually, I had no time to run into too much details. For those participants, we advised them to continue to use a pill a day during their sexual intercourses, as long as they are sexually active.
Ending with the last pill 48 hours after the last.
Ending with the last 2 pills.
Thank you.
Hello, Jean-Michel Gaskiens from England. From your wonderfully detailed diagram of adherence, it looks like you'd be able to relate specific adherence to seroconversion. And I'm interested in the question of whether seroconversion was always related to reported low adherence, because obviously in your study it could mean 2 different things. They could be not taking PrEP because they weren't at risk, or they could be not taking PrEP even though they were at risk. So are you able to do that?
Right. Well, thank you for the question. Again, as I have shown, the only 2 participants in the active arm who became infected were actually not using PrEP for the last couple of months before the infection, but they were still very active sexually. In the placebo arm, it would be difficult to assess that, but the adherence to the PrEP regimen was pretty good.
And have you got any independent measure of drug levels to correlate what they're saying about their adherence?
Like I said, again, the 2 participants in the active arm who actually became infected had no drugs detected at the visit prior seroconversion and even at the visit before. And we've presented at the AIDS conference in Melbourne already the data on all drug level measured in the participants. And in the subgroup of 100 participants in the active arm in whom we measured drug levels, we had over 80% of the participants with drug detectable.
1 or 2 more questions, very quick.
No, Michel?
Here.
Great work, Mauro Checa, Brazil. Just I'd like you to comment on the higher than expected incidence in the placebo arm, just like the PROUD study. Is it compensation or a channeling of volunteers?
I'm not sure, Mauro, I got your question right.
The incidence in the placebo arm was much higher than expected, both in your study and the PROUD study. So is that because of the risk compensation or because of channeling of volunteers, higher risk volunteers than you actually expected in your trial?
No, I think we have been able to enroll high-risk people, but we have to acknowledge also that we didn't really know what was the real incidence in our countries and in our cities. And it was actually, it's pretty high, very high. Last question.
I'd like to know what drove the 2-1-1 dosing recommendation or regime, and how confident you are that that's kind of the most effective use of Truvada for on-demand, or the most effective dosing for on-demand PrEP.
Thank you. Well, I thought I've shown you the data in the animal model that actually was the basis of the regimen we recommended in the study. And also, is it the most effective? I don't know. The study is not a huge study, but still there was no infection among the participants randomized to the Truvada arm as long as they were using their drugs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jean-Michel.